Question 1. The assessment process reveals that a financial services firm is planning to migrate a critical customer data processing application to IBM Cloud. The application handles sensitive personal financial information and is subject to strict data residency and privacy regulations. The solution architect has proposed a design that leverages several IBM Cloud services for scalability and performance. However, during the review, it becomes apparent that the proposed architecture has not explicitly addressed the specific data residency requirements mandated by the relevant financial regulatory bodies, nor has it fully integrated the necessary audit logging capabilities to meet compliance standards for transaction traceability. The project timeline is aggressive, and there is pressure to deploy quickly. Which of the following approaches best addresses the situation while adhering to professional best practices and regulatory obligations? Option A. Focus solely on optimizing the performance and scalability of the application using IBM Cloud services, and delegate the responsibility for ensuring regulatory compliance to the application development team. Option B. Proceed with the deployment as planned, assuming the IBM Cloud services' inherent security features will satisfy the regulatory requirements, and address any compliance gaps post-deployment through configuration adjustments. Option C. Halt the deployment and initiate a thorough review of the proposed architecture with the firm's compliance and legal teams to identify specific data residency controls and audit logging mechanisms required by the applicable financial regulations, and then revise the architecture accordingly before proceeding. Option D. Implement the proposed architecture immediately to meet the aggressive timeline, and then engage a third-party security auditor to retroactively certify the compliance of the deployed solution. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the deployment as planned, assuming the IBM Cloud services' inherent security features will satisfy the regulatory requirements, and address any compliance gaps post-deployment through configuration adjustments. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with robust security and compliance requirements. This scenario is professionally challenging because the architect must navigate conflicting priorities, potentially impacting project timelines, budget, and the organization's risk posture. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen solution not only meets functional requirements, but also adheres to the stringent regulatory framework governing the specific industry and jurisdiction. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and the implementation of appropriate security controls before full deployment. This aligns with the principle of security by design and proactive compliance, which are fundamental to responsible cloud architecture. Specifically, it demonstrates an understanding of the regulatory framework's emphasis on data protection, access control, and auditability. By engaging with compliance and security teams early, the architect ensures that the solution will meet all mandated requirements, thereby mitigating legal, financial, and reputational risks. This proactive engagement is a hallmark of ethical and professional conduct in regulated environments. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with deployment without adequate security validation and compliance sign-off represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for the established legal and compliance obligations, potentially exposing the organization to severe penalties, data breaches, and loss of customer trust. This approach prioritizes speed over safety and compliance, which is professionally unacceptable. Another incorrect approach, which is to over-engineer security measures to the point of hindering essential business functionality, also presents a professional challenge. While security is paramount, an architect must also ensure the solution is practical and enables the business to operate effectively. An overly restrictive security posture can lead to user frustration, reduced productivity, and ultimately, the circumvention of security controls, creating new vulnerabilities. This approach fails to strike the necessary balance and can be seen as a lack of understanding of the business context and the practical application of security principles. A further incorrect approach, such as assuming that the cloud provider's default security settings are sufficient for all regulatory requirements, is a critical oversight. While cloud providers offer robust security features, the responsibility for configuring and managing these controls to meet specific industry and jurisdictional mandates ultimately lies with the customer. Relying solely on defaults without a thorough review and customization based on the organization's unique risk profile and regulatory obligations is a direct violation of due diligence and a failure to uphold professional responsibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the business and technical requirements. Clearly define what the solution needs to achieve from both a functional and operational perspective. 2. Identify applicable regulatory frameworks. Determine all relevant laws, regulations, and industry standards that govern the data and operations involved. 3. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment. Evaluate potential threats and vulnerabilities in the context of the proposed cloud solution and the regulatory landscape. 4. Engage stakeholders. Collaborate closely with security, compliance, legal, and business units throughout the design and implementation phases. 5. Design for security and compliance. Integrate security controls and compliance measures into the architecture from the outset. 6. Validate and test. Rigorously test the solution to ensure it meets both functional and security/compliance requirements. 7. Document and monitor. Maintain thorough documentation of the architecture, security controls, and compliance measures, and establish ongoing monitoring processes. Question 2. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in latency for a critical application hosted on IBM Cloud. The current resource allocation appears to be at 70% utilization during peak hours. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to IBM Cloud best practices for solution architecture? Option A. Reduce the monitoring frequency of the application's performance metrics to avoid triggering alerts and focus on other development tasks. Option B. Implement a caching layer across all application services without investigating the root cause of the latency, assuming it is a general performance issue. Option C. Conduct a detailed performance profiling of the application to identify specific bottlenecks, and then implement targeted optimizations or resource adjustments based on the findings, considering both performance gains and cost implications. Option D. Immediately scale up the underlying compute resources by 50% to proactively handle anticipated future load and ensure latency remains within acceptable limits. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed performance profiling of the application to identify specific bottlenecks, and then implement targeted optimizations or resource adjustments based on the findings, considering both performance gains and cost implications. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing performance optimization with cost efficiency and adherence to service-level agreements, SLAs. The architect must evaluate different strategies for addressing performance degradation, while considering the financial implications and the contractual obligations to the client. The professional challenge lies in making a data-driven decision that is technically sound, economically viable, and compliant with IBM Cloud service terms and any client-specific agreements. The correct approach involves a systematic analysis of the root cause of the performance metrics, and then selecting a solution that directly addresses the identified issue without over-provisioning resources. This demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing efficient resource utilization, which aligns with IBM Cloud's best practices for cost management and performance tuning. It also ensures that SLAs are met without incurring unnecessary expenditure, reflecting a responsible and client-focused approach. An incorrect approach might involve immediately scaling up resources without a thorough investigation. This could lead to significant cost overruns, violating the principle of cost optimization and potentially breaching client budget agreements. Ethically, it's a failure to act in the client's best financial interest. Another incorrect approach could be to ignore the performance metrics, assuming they are transient. This would be a direct violation of SLAs, leading to contractual breaches and reputational damage. It also fails to uphold the professional responsibility to deliver a reliable and performant solution. A third incorrect approach might be to implement a complex, custom solution that is not well supported by IBM Cloud services, introducing potential long-term maintenance issues and vendor lock-in, which is not aligned with best practices for leveraging cloud-native capabilities. Professionals should approach such situations by first establishing clear performance baselines and monitoring mechanisms. When deviations occur, a structured troubleshooting process should be initiated, involving log analysis, resource utilization monitoring, and potentially profiling. The decision-making process should then weigh the cost of various remediation strategies against the impact of performance degradation and the terms of the SLA. This involves understanding the cost models of different IBM cloud services and their scalability options. Question 3. Assessment of an IBM cloud solution architecture for a financial services client operating under strict data residency laws in a specific jurisdiction, where all customer financial data must physically reside within that jurisdiction's borders. The architect is considering deploying a new customer-facing application on IBM Cloud. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with the jurisdiction's data residency requirements while meeting the application's performance and scalability needs? Option A. Utilizing a multi-region deployment strategy across various global IBM cloud regions to maximize availability, assuming that data anonymization techniques will suffice for compliance. Option B. Relying on IBM Cloud's general security features and contractual agreements to ensure data protection, without specifically selecting a region based on the jurisdiction's data residency mandates. Option C. Deploying the application and its associated data storage services within an IBM Cloud region, explicitly designated and certified for data residency within the specified jurisdiction, and configuring services to enforce data locality. Option D. Deploying the application on the closest available IBM Cloud region to the client's primary operations to minimize latency, without specific verification of the region's data residency compliance for the jurisdiction. Correct answer is C. Deploying the application and its associated data storage services within an IBM Cloud region, explicitly designated and certified for data residency within the specified jurisdiction, and configuring services to enforce data locality. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the immediate need for a scalable and cost-effective solution with the long-term implications of data residency and compliance. The architect must navigate the complexities of IBM cloud services while adhering to stringent data protection regulations relevant to the specified jurisdiction. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen architecture not only meets functional and performance requirements, but also satisfies legal and ethical obligations regarding data handling. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of IBM Cloud's global infrastructure and its capabilities for data localization. By leveraging IBM Cloud's regional offerings and understanding the specific data residency requirements of the jurisdiction, the architect can design a solution that keeps sensitive data within the designated geographical boundaries. This aligns with best professional practice by prioritizing compliance and mitigating legal risks. It demonstrates a commitment to data sovereignty and customer trust, which are paramount in regulated industries. The chosen solution would likely involve configuring services to deploy within specific IBM Cloud regions that are certified or compliant with the jurisdiction's data protection laws. An incorrect approach would be to deploy services without explicit consideration for data location, assuming that all IBM Cloud services are inherently compliant globally. This overlooks the critical aspect of data residency, which is a fundamental requirement in many jurisdictions. Such an approach could lead to regulatory violations, significant fines, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings or ease of deployment over compliance by selecting a region that is not suitable for the sensitive data. This demonstrates a failure to conduct due diligence and a disregard for legal obligations. A third incorrect approach might involve relying on generic assurances of security without verifying specific data residency controls offered by IBM Cloud for the target jurisdiction. This is a failure to perform adequate risk assessment and due diligence. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify and understand all relevant regulatory requirements, including data residency, data privacy, and industry-specific compliance mandates for the target jurisdiction. 2. Map these requirements to the capabilities and offerings of IBM Cloud, specifically focusing on regional deployments and data localization features. 3. Evaluate different IBM Cloud service configurations and deployment models against the identified requirements, considering both technical feasibility and compliance adherence. 4. Conduct a risk assessment for each potential solution, identifying potential compliance gaps and mitigation strategies. 5. Document the decision-making process, including the rationale for the chosen architecture and the justification for how it meets all regulatory obligations. 6. Seek legal and compliance counsel when uncertainties exist regarding regulatory interpretation or the capabilities of cloud services. Question 4. Comparative studies suggest that the effectiveness of cloud solution risk assessment is significantly influenced by its integration into the development lifecycle. When designing a new IBM cloud solution for a financial services client, which approach to risk assessment best aligns with industry best practices and regulatory expectations for proactive risk management? Option A. Rely exclusively on automated security scanning tools to identify technical vulnerabilities, assuming that addressing these will cover all significant risks. Option B. Perform a detailed risk assessment only after the solution has been fully deployed and is operational to identify any unforeseen issues. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their business impact early in the design phase, developing mitigation strategies concurrently with solution components. Option D. Undertake a high-level risk assessment that focuses only on the most common and obvious threats, without deep dives into specific business impacts or less apparent vulnerabilities. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their business impact early in the design phase, developing mitigation strategies concurrently with solution components. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with robust risk management. The pressure to deliver new features quickly can lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process, potentially exposing the organization to significant security, compliance, and operational vulnerabilities. The architect must navigate competing priorities and ensure that risk assessment is not an afterthought but an integral part of the solution design. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves integrating a comprehensive risk assessment framework into the early stages of the solution design lifecycle. This means proactively identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impact, and then developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in cloud security and governance, which emphasize security by design and risk-informed decision-making philosophy. By conducting a thorough assessment, the architect ensures that the solution adheres to relevant IBM cloud policies, industry standards, and any applicable regulatory requirements, thereby minimizing potential breaches, data loss, and service disruptions. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining client trust and operational integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to defer the detailed risk assessment until after the solution has been deployed. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure because it violates the principle of proactive risk management. Many compliance frameworks and IBM's own governance policies mandate that risks be identified and addressed before systems go live. Post-deployment assessment often leads to costly remediation, emergency patches, and potential data breaches, all of which are unacceptable from a risk and compliance perspective. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on automated security scans, without a qualitative analysis of potential business impacts. While automated tools are valuable for identifying technical vulnerabilities, they often fail to capture the nuanced business context and the specific impact of a compromise on critical operations or sensitive data. This oversight can lead to misprioritization of risks and inadequate mitigation strategies, potentially leaving the organization exposed to significant financial or reputational damage. This approach fails to meet the depth of analysis required by robust risk management frameworks. A third incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only considers the most obvious threats, neglecting less apparent but potentially high-impact risks such as supply chain vulnerabilities or insider threats. This superficiality is a failure of due diligence and can lead to a false sense of security. Effective risk assessment requires a broad and deep understanding of the threat landscape and the specific context of the solution being deployed. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud solution architecture. This involves 1. Understanding the business context and critical assets. 2. Identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the specific cloud services and data being used. 3. Assessing the likelihood and impact of identified risks. 4. Developing and prioritizing mitigation strategies, including technical controls, policy changes, and operational procedures. 5. Continuously monitoring and reviewing risks throughout the solution's lifecycle. This systematic process ensures that risk management is an ongoing and integral part of solution delivery, rather than a reactive measure. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal that a client, operating in a jurisdiction with stringent data privacy laws, is eager to migrate sensitive customer data to a new IBM cloud solution within an aggressive timeline. The client's internal team has indicated that a full security assessment and the implementation of advanced data encryption protocols might delay the launch by several weeks. The solution architect is presented with the option to proceed with the migration using standard security measures, with the promise of implementing advanced controls post-launch, or to insist on a comprehensive security review and implementation before any data is moved. Option A. Escalate the issue to senior management within the client organization, highlighting the potential regulatory and security risks of a premature migration. Option B. Propose a phased migration approach where non-sensitive data is moved first, followed by a delayed migration of sensitive data after all security assessments are complete. Option C. Proceed with the data migration using standard security measures, trusting the client's assurance that advanced controls will be implemented shortly after the launch. Option D. Insist on a comprehensive security review and the implementation of appropriate data protection controls before any sensitive customer data is migrated, even if it means delaying the project. Correct answer is D. Insist on a comprehensive security review and the implementation of appropriate data protection controls before any sensitive customer data is migrated, even if it means delaying the project. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge stemming from a potential conflict between a client's immediate business needs and the architect's ethical obligation to ensure data privacy and security, particularly concerning sensitive customer information. The architect must balance the client's desire for rapid deployment with the imperative to adhere to data protection regulations and best practices. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise compliance, making careful judgment and adherence to established protocols critical. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and the implementation of robust security controls before data migration. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by regulations like GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, if the client operates within its jurisdiction or similar frameworks in other regions. It demonstrates professional responsibility by ensuring that the solution not only meets functional requirements but also safeguards sensitive data, thereby preventing potential breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. This proactive stance is a cornerstone of ethical cloud architecture. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the data migration without adequate security assessments or controls in place, relying solely on the client's assurances. This directly violates the principle of due diligence and could lead to a data breach, exposing sensitive customer information. Such an action would be a failure to comply with data protection laws, which typically require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data. Another incorrect approach is to delay the project indefinitely due to minor, unquantified risks, without proposing mitigation strategies. While caution is important, an indefinite delay without a clear path forward can be professionally irresponsible, failing to meet client expectations and potentially hindering their business operations. This approach lacks the proactive problem-solving expected of a solution architect. A third incorrect approach is to implement a superficial security measure that does not adequately address the identified risks, simply to meet a deadline. This is a form of ethical compromise, where the appearance of compliance is prioritized over actual data protection. It exposes the client to significant risks and would be a clear violation of professional standards and regulatory requirements for data security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the full scope of requirements, including regulatory compliance and security mandates. This involves identifying potential risks, assessing their impact, and developing mitigation strategies. When faced with conflicting priorities, such as speed versus security, the architect must advocate for solutions that uphold ethical and legal obligations. This often involves transparent communication with the client about risks and the necessary steps to address them, proposing phased approaches or alternative solutions that balance competing demands. The ultimate goal is to deliver a secure, compliant, and effective solution. Question 6. To address the challenge of rapidly deploying a new customer-facing application on IBM Cloud, which requires processing sensitive customer information, what is the most appropriate initial step for a solution architect to ensure compliance and mitigate risks? Option A. Prioritize the selection of the most cost-effective IBM cloud services to minimize initial investment, assuming the cloud provider handles all compliance aspects. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates data privacy, security, regulatory compliance, and operational risks associated with the proposed application architecture and data flows. Option C. Expedite the deployment process by focusing solely on technical implementation, deferring detailed risk and compliance reviews until after the application is live. Option D. Rely entirely on the IBM Cloud provider's standard security and compliance documentation to validate that the solution meets all necessary requirements without further internal analysis. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates data privacy, security, regulatory compliance, and operational risks associated with the proposed application architecture and data flows. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for business agility with the long-term implications of data privacy and security, particularly within the context of IBM Cloud's shared responsibility model. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to identify potential risks and ensure compliance with relevant regulations, which in this case, for the C1000-100 exam, implicitly refers to general data protection principles and best practices applicable to cloud environments, without specifying a particular jurisdiction beyond what's inherent in cloud service provision. The architect must consider how the proposed solution affects data handling, access controls, and potential exposure. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically evaluates the potential consequences of the proposed cloud solution on data privacy, security, and operational continuity. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design, ensuring that these considerations are integrated from the outset. It involves identifying sensitive data, understanding regulatory requirements, even if not explicitly stated, general principles apply, and assessing the impact of cloud adoption on these aspects. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of breaches, noncompliance, and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a commensurate impact assessment fails to acknowledge the inherent risks associated with cloud deployments. This can lead to regulatory violations if sensitive data is mishandled or inadequately protected, resulting in fines and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over a comprehensive risk evaluation overlooks potential security vulnerabilities. This could expose the organization to data breaches, unauthorized access, and service disruptions, which are ethically and professionally unacceptable. A third incorrect approach that delegates the entire impact assessment to the cloud provider without independent verification is also flawed. While providers offer security measures, the customer retains ultimate responsibility for data protection and compliance within their specific implementation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the business objectives, followed by a thorough identification of potential risks and impacts across technical, operational, and regulatory domains. This involves engaging relevant stakeholders, documenting findings, and developing mitigation strategies. The process should be iterative, allowing for adjustments as the solution evolves. Question 7. Quality control measures reveal that a U.S.-based financial services firm intends to migrate sensitive customer data to IBM Cloud. The firm operates under strict U.S. federal regulations, e.g., SEC/FINRA, that mandate specific data residency and privacy controls. As the IBM Cloud solution architect, which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance for this migration? Option A. Deploy services in IBM Cloud regions outside the U.S. to leverage potential cost savings and broader service availability, with a plan to address compliance post-deployment. Option B. Select IBM cloud services that are explicitly certified and documented as compliant with relevant U.S. financial regulations and ensure deployment within U.S.-based IBM cloud data centers. Option C. Prioritize the use of the most advanced and cost-effective IBM cloud services, assuming they meet general data protection standards. Option D. Rely on the client's internal IT team to manage all aspects of regulatory compliance for the cloud migration. The correct answer is B. Select IBM cloud services that are explicitly certified and documented as compliant with relevant U.S. financial regulations and ensure deployment within U.S.-based IBM cloud data centers. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with stringent regulatory compliance requirements. The challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen cloud services and their configurations adhere to the specific data residency and privacy mandates applicable to the client's industry and geographic location, without stifling the agility expected from cloud adoption. Misinterpreting or overlooking these requirements can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. The architect must navigate a complex landscape of evolving regulations and IBM cloud service offerings to provide a compliant and effective solution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the client's specific regulatory obligations, which in this context would be governed by U.S. federal and state laws pertaining to data privacy and residency, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, CCPA for California residents, or other industry-specific regulations. This necessitates consulting IBM Cloud's documentation and support to identify services that are certified or compliant with these U.S. regulations and can be deployed within the required geographic boundaries within the U.S. The architect must then design the solution to leverage these compliant services, ensuring data is stored and processed in accordance with the identified mandates. This proactive and diligent approach ensures that the solution not only meets technical requirements, but also adheres to legal and ethical standards, representing best professional practice by prioritizing client protection and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize the use of the most cost-effective or feature-rich IBM cloud services without verifying their compliance with U.S. data residency and privacy laws. This demonstrates a failure to uphold professional responsibility by potentially exposing the client to regulatory violations. Such an oversight could lead to fines, audits, and legal action, as it disregards the fundamental requirement to protect sensitive data according to established legal frameworks. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that all IBM cloud services are inherently compliant with all U.S. regulations. This is a dangerous generalization that ignores the nuanced nature of compliance, which often depends on specific service configurations, data types, and geographic deployment regions. Relying on such assumptions without due diligence is a direct violation of the architect's duty to ensure a secure and compliant solution. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the entire responsibility of regulatory compliance to the client without providing clear guidance or architectural recommendations. While the client ultimately bears responsibility for their data, the solution architect has an ethical and professional obligation to design solutions that facilitate compliance. Abrogating this responsibility entirely leaves the client vulnerable and demonstrates a lack of commitment to a comprehensive and secure solution. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a risk-aware and compliance-first mindset. The decision-making process should begin with a comprehensive understanding of the client's regulatory environment. This involves actively seeking out and interpreting relevant U.S. federal and state laws and industry-specific mandates. Subsequently, the architect must engage with IBM Cloud's compliance documentation and resources to map these requirements to available services and deployment options. When selecting services, the primary criterion should be demonstrable compliance with the identified regulations, followed by technical and business requirements. Continuous monitoring and validation of compliance throughout the solution lifecycle are also critical. This structured approach ensures that technical solutions are not only functional, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to accelerate the deployment of a new customer-facing analytics dashboard that leverages sensitive customer data. While the development team is eager to release the dashboard quickly, the compliance team has raised concerns about data anonymization and access controls, and the security team has highlighted potential vulnerabilities in the proposed data ingestion pipeline. The solution architect needs to propose a path forward. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for rapid deployment with robust security and compliance? Option A. Prioritize the development of the dashboard's core features and deploy it to production, deferring the implementation of advanced data anonymization and granular access controls to a later phase. Option B. Collaborate with the security and compliance teams to define and implement necessary data anonymization techniques and access controls as part of the initial development sprint, even if it means a slight delay in the dashboard's full feature set. Option C. Implement the dashboard with the proposed data ingestion pipeline and access controls, and then schedule a post-deployment security and compliance audit to address any identified issues. Option D. Proceed with the dashboard development as planned by the business stakeholders, assuming that the existing organizational security policies are sufficient to mitigate any risks associated with the new feature. The correct answer is C. Implement the dashboard with the proposed data ingestion pipeline and access controls, and then schedule a post-deployment security and compliance audit to address any identified issues. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the desire for rapid innovation and feature deployment with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The challenge is amplified by the diverse needs and perspectives of various stakeholders, each with their own priorities and risk tolerances. A solution architect must navigate these competing interests, ensuring that technical decisions align with both business objectives and regulatory requirements. The correct approach prioritizes a phased, risk-based implementation of new features, integrating security and compliance considerations from the outset. This aligns with best practices in cloud governance and the principles of secure development lifecycles, which are implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data protection and system integrity. By involving compliance and security teams early, the architect ensures that potential risks are identified and mitigated before they can impact the business or lead to regulatory violations. This proactive stance is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and maintaining a strong compliance posture. An incorrect approach that bypasses established security and compliance review processes for speed introduces significant regulatory and ethical risks. This could lead to the deployment of solutions that inadvertently expose sensitive data, violate data privacy regulations, such as GDPR if the jurisdiction were EU, or similar U.S. regulations like HIPAA for health data, or CCPA for California consumer data, or fail to meet industry-specific compliance standards. Such failures can result in substantial fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical feasibility without considering the broader impact on compliance and security overlooks the architect's responsibility to safeguard the organization and its customers. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interconnectedness of technical solutions and regulatory obligations, leading to potential breaches and non-compliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of stakeholder requirements and the regulatory landscape. This involves actively seeking input from all relevant parties, including business units, IT security, legal, and compliance departments. A risk assessment should then be conducted for any proposed solution, identifying potential technical, security, and compliance risks. Mitigation strategies should be developed and integrated into the solution design. Finally, a clear communication plan should be established to keep stakeholders informed of progress, risks, and decisions, ensuring transparency and alignment throughout the project lifecycle. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to accelerate the deployment of a new customer-facing application on IBM Cloud. While the business team is pushing for a rapid go-live, the architecture team has raised concerns about potential security vulnerabilities and compliance gaps. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for speed with robust risk management? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and implement all identified mitigation strategies before proceeding with deployment, even if it delays the go-live date. Option B. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to a dedicated security operations team, with minimal involvement from the solution architects during the design phase. Option C. Focus solely on implementing the technical security controls specified by the security team, without further engagement with business stakeholders on the risk appetite. Option D. Prioritize deployment based on business urgency, and schedule a post-deployment security audit to address any identified risks. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and implement all identified mitigation strategies before proceeding with deployment, even if it delays the go-live date. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with robust risk management. Stakeholders, driven by business objectives, often prioritize speed, which can lead to overlooking critical security and compliance considerations. The challenge lies in integrating risk assessment seamlessly into the development lifecycle without becoming a bottleneck. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and integrated risk assessment methodology. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities early in the solution design phase, evaluating their impact and likelihood, and then implementing appropriate controls. This aligns with best practices in cloud security and governance, which mandate a continuous risk management process. By embedding risk assessment into the architecture and design, it becomes an inherent part of the solution, rather than an afterthought. This proactive stance is crucial for meeting regulatory compliance requirements, such as those related to data protection and privacy, which demand that security and risk mitigation are built into systems from the outset. An incorrect approach that solely relies on post-deployment security audits fails to address risks proactively. This is a reactive measure that can lead to costly remediation efforts and potential breaches after sensitive data has already been exposed or systems compromised. It also likely violates regulatory frameworks that require risk assessments to be conducted as part of the design and development process, not just as a final check. Another incorrect approach, focusing only on the technical aspects of security without considering the business context and stakeholder concerns, is also problematic. Risk is not purely a technical issue. It has significant business implications. Ignoring stakeholder feedback or the business impact of identified risks leads to solutions that may be technically secure but fail to meet business objectives or gain stakeholder buy-in, ultimately hindering adoption and effectiveness. Finally, an approach that delegates risk assessment entirely to a separate security team without involving the solution architects and development teams creates silos and can lead to misinterpretations or a lack of ownership. Effective risk management requires collaboration and a shared understanding of the risks and controls across all involved parties. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach that is integrated into the entire solution lifecycle. This involves 1. Understanding the business context and stakeholder objectives. 2. Identifying potential risks and threats relevant to the cloud environment and the specific solution. 3. Assessing the likelihood and impact of these risks. 4. Designing and implementing appropriate controls to mitigate identified risks. 5. Continuously monitoring and reviewing risks throughout the solution's lifecycle. 6. Fostering collaboration between architects, developers, security teams, and business stakeholders. Question 10. Consider a scenario where a client urgently needs to integrate a new third-party service with their existing IBM cloud infrastructure to meet a critical business deadline. The client has identified a specific integration method that appears to be the quickest to implement, but has not undergone a thorough security or compliance review. As an IBM cloud solution architect, you have concerns about the potential security vulnerabilities and regulatory implications of this unvetted integration method under U.S. federal and state data protection laws. What is the most professional and ethically sound approach to address this situation? Option A. Immediately implement the client's preferred integration method to meet the deadline, assuring them that any security issues can be addressed post-implementation. Option B. Propose a temporary workaround that involves storing sensitive data in a less secure, but readily accessible, location until a more secure integration can be developed. Option C. Advise the client that the integration cannot be performed as requested due to security concerns and refuse to proceed without a fully vetted solution, even if it means missing the deadline. Option D. Conduct a rapid, focused security and compliance assessment of the proposed integration method, identify any critical risks, and present the client with a revised implementation plan that addresses these risks, potentially involving a phased approach or alternative secure integration patterns. The correct answer is D. Conduct a rapid, focused security and compliance assessment of the proposed integration method, identify any critical risks, and present the client with a revised implementation plan that addresses these risks, potentially involving a phased approach or alternative secure integration patterns. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the potential conflict between a client's immediate business needs and the architect's ethical obligation to recommend solutions that are secure and compliant with IBM Cloud's best practices and relevant U.S. regulations. The architect must navigate the pressure to deliver a quick solution while upholding professional integrity and safeguarding the client's data and operational stability. The challenge lies in balancing client satisfaction with the architect's responsibility to provide technically sound and ethically responsible advice, especially when a shortcut might introduce unforeseen risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the client's requirements against IBM Cloud security and compliance frameworks, followed by a recommendation for a phased implementation that addresses the immediate need while ensuring long-term security and compliance. This aligns with professional ethical codes that prioritize client well-being and data integrity. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of due diligence and responsible technology adoption, ensuring that any solution proposed is not only functional, but also robust against potential security threats and regulatory violations under U.S. law. This approach demonstrates a commitment to building trust through transparency and a focus on sustainable, secure solutions. Incorrect approaches analysis, recommending the immediate implementation of the unvetted third-party integration without a comprehensive security and compliance review is professionally unacceptable. This approach bypasses critical due diligence, potentially exposing the client to data breaches, intellectual property theft, and non-compliance with U.S. data protection regulations such as HIPAA or GDPR, if applicable to the client's data. Prioritizes expediency over security and ethical responsibility, suggesting a workaround that involves storing sensitive data in an insecure manner, even temporarily, is also a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This directly violates principles of data confidentiality and integrity, and contravenes U.S. data privacy laws that mandate secure handling of sensitive information. Such an approach demonstrates a disregard for the potential harm to the client and their customers, ignoring the client's concerns about the integration's security and proceeding with the implementation as requested, without further investigation or discussion, is a failure of professional duty. It neglects the architect's responsibility to advise the client on potential risks and to advocate for secure and compliant solutions. This can lead to reputational damage for both the architect and the client, and potential legal ramifications due to non-compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of client needs, followed by a rigorous evaluation of technical feasibility, security implications, and regulatory compliance. When faced with potential conflicts, open communication with the client about risks and alternative solutions is paramount. Architects should leverage their expertise to educate clients on best practices and the long-term consequences of shortcuts. The process should always prioritize ethical conduct, client data protection, and adherence to relevant legal and regulatory frameworks. Question 11. The investigation demonstrates that a client, a financial services firm, is seeking to migrate a customer relationship management (CRM) system to IBM Cloud. The client's primary concern is the speed of migration and the cost-effectiveness of the solution. During initial discussions, the client's IT manager mentions that their customer data is primarily located within a specific European Union country and that they have some awareness of GDPR, but are not fully versed in its implications for cloud deployments. As an IBM Cloud solution architect, what is the most responsible and ethically sound approach to designing the solution? Option A. Implement the CRM migration using a standard IBM Cloud configuration, trusting that the client's general awareness of GDPR is sufficient to manage compliance. Option B. Focus solely on the technical aspects of the migration and cost optimization, deferring all data residency and GDPR compliance discussions to the client's legal team. Option C. Prioritize understanding and documenting all data residency requirements and relevant GDPR provisions pertaining to customer data before proceeding with any solution design, and proactively advise the client on compliant deployment options. Option D. Proceed with designing a cost-effective solution that centralizes data in a readily available IBM cloud region, assuming the client will address any specific data residency concerns later. Correct answer is C. Prioritize understanding and documenting all data residency requirements and relevant GDPR provisions pertaining to customer data before proceeding with any solution design, and proactively advise the client on compliant deployment options. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a solution architect must balance the client's immediate business needs with the ethical imperative of data privacy and security, particularly concerning sensitive customer information. The pressure to deliver a solution quickly, coupled with the client's potential lack of full understanding of regulatory implications, creates a conflict that requires careful judgment and adherence to established principles. The architect's responsibility extends beyond technical implementation to ensuring compliance and ethical data handling. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of data residency requirements and relevant regulations before proceeding with the solution design. This aligns with the principles of responsible cloud architecture and data governance. By proactively identifying and addressing data residency concerns, the architect ensures that the proposed solution complies with applicable laws and protects sensitive customer data. This demonstrates a commitment to ethical practice and risk mitigation, safeguarding both the client and the individuals whose data is being processed. Adherence to IBM's own ethical guidelines and best practices for cloud solutions further reinforces this approach. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the solution design without a clear understanding of data residency requirements. This is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It risks noncompliance with data protection laws, potentially leading to severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the architect's professional responsibility to protect sensitive data. Another incorrect approach is to assume that the client's stated requirements automatically satisfy all regulatory obligations. This abdicates the architect's professional responsibility to advise on compliance. It can lead to a solution that appears to meet immediate needs, but is fundamentally non-compliant, creating future legal and operational risks for the client. This approach prioritizes expediency over ethical and legal due diligence. A third incorrect approach is to implement a solution that centralizes data without verifying if this aligns with data residency laws. Even if the client expresses no specific concerns, data residency is a legal requirement, not merely a preference. Ignoring it, even without explicit client objection, constitutes a failure to provide a compliant and secure solution, exposing the client to significant risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of client requirements, followed by a rigorous assessment of all applicable regulatory and legal frameworks. This includes proactive identification of data residency, privacy, and security mandates. The architect must then translate these requirements into a technically sound and compliant solution. Open communication with the client about potential risks and compliance considerations is crucial. When in doubt, seeking guidance from legal or compliance experts within the organization or consulting relevant regulatory documentation is essential. The ultimate goal is to deliver a solution that is not only functional, but also ethically sound and legally compliant. Question 12. Upon reviewing the security and compliance requirements for a new application that will process sensitive customer financial data on IBM Cloud, which of the following architectural approaches best aligns with IBM's recommended security posture and data protection guidelines? Option A. Implement robust network security controls, such as firewalls and intrusion detection systems, and rely on the inherent security of the chosen IBM cloud services without explicit data encryption configurations. Option B. Deploy the application on IBM Cloud without specific security configurations, assuming that IBM Cloud's default settings provide adequate protection for sensitive financial data. Option C. Utilize IBM Cloud Identity and Access Management, (IAM), for granular access control. Ensure all sensitive data is encrypted at rest using IBM Key Protect, and enable comprehensive audit logging for all data access events. Option D. Focus primarily on application-level security features, and delegate all data protection responsibilities to the end users of the application. The correct answer is A. Implement robust network security controls, such as firewalls and intrusion detection systems, and rely on the inherent security of the chosen IBM cloud services without explicit data encryption configurations. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the practicalities of rapid deployment and cost-effectiveness. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the IBM cloud security and compliance guidelines, which are designed to protect sensitive data and meet regulatory obligations within the context of a dynamic business requirement. A solution architect must not only understand the technical capabilities of IBM cloud services, but also their implications for data governance and risk management. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the IBM cloud security and compliance framework, specifically focusing on data encryption at rest and in transit, access control mechanisms, and audit logging capabilities. Best professional practice dictates prioritizing solutions that demonstrably meet or exceed the minimum security and compliance requirements outlined by IBM and relevant industry standards. This includes leveraging IBM Cloud's built-in security features, such as Key Protect for encryption key management and Identity and Access Management (IAM) for granular access control, and ensuring that all data handling adheres to the principle of least privilege. This aligns with the ethical obligation to protect client data and maintain trust. An incorrect approach that overlooks the encryption requirements for sensitive data at rest would be professionally unacceptable. This failure represents a direct violation of data protection principles and could lead to severe regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Similarly, an approach that neglects to implement comprehensive audit logging for access to sensitive data would be a significant ethical and regulatory lapse. Without proper audit trails, it becomes impossible to detect or investigate potential security breaches or policy violations, undermining accountability and compliance efforts. Another incorrect approach might involve relying solely on network-level security without addressing data-level encryption, leaving data vulnerable even if the network perimeter is breached. This demonstrates a lack of comprehensive risk assessment and a failure to implement defense-in-depth strategies. The professional decision-making process should involve a risk-based assessment. This means identifying sensitive data, understanding the potential threats and vulnerabilities, and then selecting IBM cloud services and configurations that mitigate these risks effectively. It requires consulting IBM cloud documentation, security best practices, and, if necessary, engaging with IBM security specialists. The architect must be able to articulate the security and compliance rationale behind their design choices, ensuring that the proposed solution is not only technically sound, but also ethically responsible and legally compliant. Question 13. Compliance review shows that a proposed IBM cloud solution for a financial services client handling sensitive customer data is being fast-tracked for deployment, with stakeholders expressing concerns that detailed regulatory impact assessments will delay the launch. The solution architecture has been designed with a focus on scalability and performance, but the specific controls for data residency and audit logging against relevant financial regulations, e.g., SOX, FINRA, depending on jurisdiction, have not been fully integrated or validated. Which approach best addresses this situation from a stakeholder perspective, ensuring both business objectives and regulatory adherence? Option A. Implement the solution with a focus on performance and scalability, and then initiate a post-deployment audit to identify and remediate any compliance issues, documenting these findings for future reference. Option B. Immediately halt the deployment process to conduct a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment, engaging legal and compliance teams to define and integrate all necessary controls before proceeding. Option C. Proceed with the deployment as planned, with a commitment to address regulatory gaps in a subsequent phase, relying on the inherent compliance features of IBM cloud services. Option D. Delegate the responsibility for regulatory compliance to the client's internal compliance team, assuming they will manage all necessary validations and approvals independently of the solution architecture design. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the deployment as planned, with a commitment to address regulatory gaps in a subsequent phase, relying on the inherent compliance features of IBM cloud services. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with stringent regulatory compliance requirements. Pressure to deliver new features quickly can lead stakeholders to overlook or downplay the importance of adhering to established governance frameworks, especially when those frameworks are perceived as slowing down progress. The architect must navigate these competing priorities, ensuring that the proposed solution not only meets business objectives, but also satisfies all applicable regulations without compromising security or data integrity. The challenge lies in translating abstract regulatory requirements into concrete technical controls and convincing stakeholders of their necessity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough understanding and integration of regulatory requirements from the outset. This involves proactively identifying all relevant regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, depending on the jurisdiction and data handled, and mapping them to specific technical controls and architectural decisions. By embedding compliance into the design phase, the architect ensures that the solution is built with compliance in mind, rather than attempting to retrofit it later, which is often more costly and less effective. This approach demonstrates best professional practice by adhering to the principle of compliance by design, which is a cornerstone of responsible cloud architecture. It also aligns with ethical obligations to protect data and uphold legal standards, fostering trust with clients and end users. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed of deployment over regulatory adherence. This often stems from a stakeholder's desire for immediate business gains, leading to the temptation to bypass or defer compliance checks. This approach is professionally unacceptable because it creates significant legal, financial, and reputational risks. Failure to comply with regulations can result in hefty fines, data breaches, loss of customer trust, and potential legal action. It violates the ethical duty of the architect to act in the best interest of the client and the public by exposing them to undue risk. Another incorrect approach is to assume that standard cloud provider compliance certifications are sufficient without specific validation for the client's unique use case and data. While cloud providers offer robust compliance frameworks, the responsibility for ensuring that the deployed solution meets specific regulatory obligations for the data it handles ultimately rests with the customer and their architect. Relying solely on provider certifications without a tailored assessment can lead to gaps in compliance, as the specific configuration and usage patterns of the solution might introduce new risks or fall outside the scope of the provider's certification. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the shared responsibility model in cloud security and compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud solution architecture. This involves 1. Identifying and understanding all applicable regulatory and legal frameworks relevant to the client's industry, location, and the type of data being processed. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify potential compliance gaps and vulnerabilities in the proposed architecture. 3. Integrating compliance requirements into the solution design from the earliest stages, treating them as non-negotiable functional requirements. 4. Documenting all compliance-related decisions and controls, providing clear justification for their implementation. 5. Engaging in continuous monitoring and auditing to ensure ongoing compliance as the solution evolves and regulations change. 6. Fostering open communication with stakeholders, educating them on the importance of compliance and the potential consequences of non-adherence, thereby building consensus around a compliant solution. Question 14. Examination of the data shows that a financial services client requires immediate deployment of a new cloud-based application to process sensitive customer financial data. The client is eager to go live within 2 weeks and has requested broad access for their internal teams to the data from day one, with security configurations to be addressed in a later phase. As the IBM Cloud Solution Architect, what is the most appropriate approach to ensure both client needs and regulatory compliance are met? Option A. Proceed with the deployment as requested, granting broad access and deferring all security configurations to a later phase, assuming the client's internal policies are sufficient. Option B. Implement a phased approach, prioritizing the establishment of robust identity and access management, data encryption, and network segmentation controls before granting access to sensitive data, even if it slightly extends the initial deployment timeline. Option C. Propose a solution that relies entirely on the client's existing on-premises security infrastructure and expertise to manage access to the cloud data, without implementing specific cloud-native security measures. Option D. Grant immediate, broad access to the sensitive data as requested by the client to meet their aggressive timeline, with a plan to implement security controls retroactively. The correct answer is B. Implement a phased approach, prioritizing the establishment of robust identity and access management, data encryption, and network segmentation controls before granting access to sensitive data, even if it slightly extends the initial deployment timeline. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The client's desire for immediate access to sensitive data in a new cloud environment without a fully established security framework creates a significant risk. The architect must navigate this tension, ensuring that the proposed solution not only meets functional requirements, but also adheres to the stringent regulatory landscape governing financial data in the U.S. The professional challenge lies in effectively communicating these risks and advocating for a secure, compliant approach without alienating the client or hindering their business objectives. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased implementation that integrates security and compliance from the outset. This aligns with the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are fundamental to U.S. data protection regulations like HIPAA, if applicable to the specific financial data, and general best practices for handling sensitive information. By establishing a secure foundation, including identity and access management, data encryption, and network segmentation, before granting broad access to sensitive data, the architect demonstrates a commitment to regulatory adherence and risk mitigation. This proactive stance protects the client from potential data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. It also establishes a scalable and sustainable cloud environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves granting immediate broad access to sensitive data without adequate security controls. This directly violates U.S. data protection principles and could lead to severe regulatory penalties under various statutes depending on the nature of the financial data, e.g., GLBA, SOX. It exposes the client to significant risks of unauthorized access, data exfiltration, and noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to delay the implementation of robust security measures until after the initial deployment, citing the client's urgency. This is a critical failure in professional responsibility and regulatory compliance. Security and compliance are not afterthoughts. They must be integral to the solution design. This approach creates a window of vulnerability that is unacceptable when dealing with sensitive financial data. A third incorrect approach is to propose a solution that relies solely on the client's internal security expertise without verifying its adequacy for the cloud environment. While client collaboration is important, the solution architect bears the ultimate responsibility for ensuring the proposed architecture meets industry standards and regulatory requirements in the U.S. This approach abdicates that responsibility and could lead to a solution that is technically functional but non-compliant. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing the protection of sensitive data and adherence to regulatory mandates. This involves a thorough understanding of the relevant U.S. legal and regulatory frameworks, a proactive integration of security and compliance controls into the solution design, and clear communication with stakeholders about risks and mitigation strategies. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying and understanding the sensitive nature of the data and applicable U.S. regulations. 2. Assessing the security and compliance requirements of the target cloud environment. 3. Designing a solution that incorporates security and compliance controls from the ground up. 4. Phasing the implementation to ensure critical controls are in place before sensitive data is exposed. 5. Documenting all design decisions and their rationale, particularly concerning security and compliance. 6. Communicating potential risks and the rationale for security measures to the client. Question 15. Performance analysis shows that a critical application deployed on IBM Cloud is experiencing latency issues impacting user experience. The solution architect has identified a configuration change that could significantly improve performance by temporarily relaxing certain network ingress filtering rules. However, the current IBM cloud security policy strictly prohibits such relaxations without explicit, documented approval from the security and compliance teams, which is a time-consuming process. What is the most professional and compliant approach for the solution architect to address this performance bottleneck? Option A. Advise the business stakeholders that the performance issues cannot be resolved due to strict security policies and recommend they accept the current performance levels. Option B. Propose a formal change request to the security and compliance teams, detailing the proposed network ingress filtering rule relaxation, its performance benefits, and a comprehensive risk assessment with proposed mitigation strategies to ensure continued compliance. Option C. Implement the performance-enhancing configuration change by creating a new, less restrictive network policy specifically for this application, without formally updating the overarching IBM cloud security policy. Option D. Implement the network ingress filtering rule relaxation immediately to resolve the performance issue, and then inform the security and compliance teams of the change with a justification for the urgency. The correct answer is B. Propose a formal change request to the security and compliance teams, detailing the proposed network ingress filtering rule relaxation, its performance benefits, and a comprehensive risk assessment with proposed mitigation strategies to ensure continued compliance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a solution architect must balance performance optimization with adherence to established governance and security policies. The challenge lies in the potential conflict between a technically superior performance gain and the risk of bypassing or weakening existing controls. The architect must demonstrate an understanding of the underlying business requirements, the implications of policy deviations, and the potential downstream impacts on compliance and security posture. Careful judgment is required to avoid introducing technical debt or security vulnerabilities in the pursuit of short-term performance gains. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review and potential modification of the existing security policies to accommodate the performance requirements, while ensuring that the modified policies still meet the overall security and compliance objectives. This represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured and controlled process for change management. It acknowledges that performance is a critical non-functional requirement, but must be addressed within the established governance framework. By engaging with the security and compliance teams, the architect ensures that any adjustments are documented, understood, and approved, thereby maintaining regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility. This approach upholds the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, even when optimizing for performance. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly implementing the performance optimization without consulting or updating the security policies. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses established controls designed to protect sensitive data and maintain system integrity. It violates the principle of accountability and can lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on the exam's assumed jurisdiction, which for C1000-100 is generally U.S.-centric unless otherwise specified, implying adherence to U.S. federal and state data privacy laws. It also creates a security vulnerability, as the optimization might inadvertently expose the system to threats that the original policies were designed to mitigate. Another incorrect approach is to abandon the performance optimization entirely due to policy restrictions, without exploring potential policy adjustments or alternative solutions. While this avoids policy violation, it fails to meet the business's performance needs, potentially leading to user dissatisfaction and reduced operational efficiency. Ethically, an architect has a responsibility to find the best possible solution for the client, which includes addressing performance concerns. This approach demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and innovation. A third incorrect approach is to implement the optimization and then attempt to retroactively justify it to the security team. This is ethically problematic, as it implies a disregard for established procedures and a lack of transparency. It can erode trust between technical teams and governance bodies and is a precursor to compliance breaches. It fails to demonstrate due diligence and a commitment to a secure and compliant cloud environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such challenges by first understanding the root cause of the performance issue and the specific business impact. Next, they should thoroughly review the existing policies and identify the exact points of conflict. The preferred method is to engage in a collaborative discussion with relevant stakeholders, security, compliance, business owners, to explore solutions. This often involves proposing modifications to policies that are justified by the business need and demonstrably maintain an acceptable level of security and compliance. If policy modification is not feasible, alternative technical solutions that achieve performance goals without policy violations should be investigated. The decision-making process should always prioritize a documented, auditable, and compliant path forward. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that the current implementation of a multi-region IBM cloud deployment for sensitive customer data is not fully compliant with data residency requirements as defined by IBM's internal cloud governance framework and applicable industry standards. The solution architect must propose a remediation strategy. Which of the following approaches best addresses this governance gap? Option A. Conduct a detailed assessment of the current data flow and storage mechanisms within the multi-region deployment. Identify specific services and configurations that violate data residency policies, and then implement targeted IBM cloud services and configurations, e.g., regional service endpoints, data encryption with region-specific key management, to ensure data remains within the approved geographic boundaries, documenting all changes and their compliance rationale. Option B. Implement a broad, organization-wide policy change to relax data residency requirements to match the current deployment, assuming the business benefits of the current architecture outweigh the compliance risks. Option C. Immediately halt all data processing in the affected regions until a comprehensive new cloud architecture can be designed and deployed, even if it means significant business disruption. Option D. Rely on the default security and compliance settings of the IBM cloud services being used, assuming they are sufficient for all data residency needs without further investigation. Correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed assessment of the current data flow and storage mechanisms within the multi-region deployment. Identify specific services and configurations that violate data residency policies, and then implement targeted IBM cloud services and configurations, e.g., regional service endpoints, data encryption with region-specific key management, to ensure data remains within the approved geographic boundaries, documenting all changes and their compliance rationale. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with robust governance and compliance. The governance review has identified a potential gap, requiring the architect to evaluate different approaches to address it. The challenge lies in selecting a solution that not only resolves the immediate compliance issue, but also aligns with long-term strategic goals, maintains operational efficiency, and adheres to IBM's internal policies and relevant industry best practices for cloud environments. The architect must consider the impact on existing workflows, the cost-effectiveness of the proposed solution, and the potential for future scalability and integration. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the identified gap against IBM's established cloud governance framework and relevant IBM cloud best practices. This includes understanding the specific compliance requirements, e.g., data residency, security standards, that are not being met. The architect should then explore IBM cloud services and features designed to address such gaps, such as enhanced security controls, data encryption services, or compliance reporting tools. The chosen solution should be integrated in a way that minimizes disruption to ongoing projects and aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. This approach represents best professional practice because it is proactive, data-driven, and prioritizes adherence to established governance and security policies, thereby mitigating risks and ensuring the integrity of the cloud environment. It also leverages IBM's own tools and methodologies, which are designed to be compliant and efficient within the IBM cloud ecosystem. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring the governance review findings is a direct violation of professional responsibility and could lead to significant regulatory penalties, data breaches, and reputational damage. This approach demonstrates a failure to uphold ethical obligations and a disregard for established compliance frameworks. Implementing a solution without understanding the underlying governance gap or its implications is a reactive and potentially ineffective measure. It risks introducing new vulnerabilities or failing to adequately address the original issue, leading to continued noncompliance and wasted resources. This reflects a lack of due diligence and a failure to apply a structured problem-solving methodology. Relying solely on vendor-provided default configurations without a specific review against IBM's governance framework and the identified gap is also problematic. While defaults can be a starting point, they may not meet the specific compliance needs of the organization or the requirements outlined in the governance review. This approach bypasses critical assessment and validation steps, potentially leaving the environment exposed. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the context and the specific findings of the governance review. This involves clearly defining the problem and its potential impact. The next step is to consult relevant documentation, including IBM's cloud governance policies, security standards, and best practice guides. Evaluating potential solutions should involve assessing their alignment with these policies, their technical feasibility, their cost implications, and their impact on existing operations. A phased implementation approach, with clear testing and validation stages, is often advisable. Continuous monitoring and periodic re-evaluation of the implemented solution are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and effectiveness. Question 17. Analysis of a scenario where a financial services firm plans to migrate customer transaction data to IBM Cloud for enhanced analytics and reporting. The firm operates globally, serving customers in the European Union, the United States, and Australia. The solution architect must design a system that not only provides powerful analytical capabilities, but also strictly adheres to the data privacy regulations of all operating regions, including GDPR, CCPA, and Australian privacy principles. The architect needs to select appropriate IBM cloud services and configure them to ensure data residency, secure processing, and transparent consent management for customer data. Option A. Deploy all customer transaction data directly onto IBM Cloud Object Storage in a single, globally accessible region, assuming IBM Cloud's global infrastructure inherently satisfies all regional data residency requirements. Rely on IBM's standard security features for data protection and assume customer consent is implicitly granted through the firm's general terms of service. Option B. Utilize IBM Cloud Kubernetes service for all data processing and storage, configuring it to replicate data across multiple global regions simultaneously. Assume that data replication ensures compliance with data residency laws and that the firm's existing data privacy policy, without explicit consent updates, is sufficient for all customer segments. Option C. Migrate all customer transaction data to IBM Cloud's most cost-effective storage solution without specific regard to regional data residency and process it using IBM Watson services. Assume that the advanced AI capabilities of Watson will automatically anonymize and secure the data to meet regulatory standards. Option D. Implement a hybrid cloud strategy, storing sensitive customer transaction data on premises in the EU, US, and Australia, while using IBM Cloud for anonymized and aggregated data analytics. Ensure all data leaving on premises is pseudonymized, and that consent for processing is obtained and managed through a dedicated consent management platform integrated with IBM Cloud services. The correct answer is D. Implement a hybrid cloud strategy, storing sensitive customer transaction data on premises in the EU, US, and Australia, while using IBM Cloud for anonymized and aggregated data analytics. Ensure all data leaving on premises is pseudonymized, and that consent for processing is obtained and managed through a dedicated consent management platform integrated with IBM Cloud services. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with the imperative to maintain data privacy and comply with evolving regulations. The architect must navigate the complexities of data residency, consent management, and the potential for data processing by third-party services, all within the context of IBM Cloud service offerings. The professional challenge lies in proactively identifying and mitigating risks associated with data handling, rather than reacting to breaches or non-compliance issues. This requires a deep understanding of both the technical capabilities of IBM Cloud and the legal and ethical obligations concerning personal data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive data governance strategy from the outset. This involves a thorough assessment of data types, their sensitivity, and applicable regulations, e.g., GDPR if the data pertains to EU citizens, or relevant U.S. federal and state privacy laws if the data is U.S.-based. It emphasizes implementing robust consent mechanisms, ensuring data minimization, and selecting IBM cloud services that offer strong data protection features and clear data processing agreements. This proactive, risk-aware methodology aligns with ethical principles of data stewardship and regulatory requirements for data privacy by design and by default. It demonstrates a commitment to building trust with users and stakeholders by embedding privacy and security into the solution's foundation. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on leveraging the latest IBM cloud services without a prior data privacy assessment fails to address regulatory requirements. This could lead to the inadvertent processing of sensitive data in jurisdictions that violate data residency laws or without proper consent, resulting in significant legal penalties and reputational damage. An approach that assumes all data processed by IBM cloud services is automatically compliant with all privacy regulations is a critical ethical and regulatory failure. Cloud providers offer tools and infrastructure, but the responsibility for compliant data handling ultimately rests with the solution architect and the organization. This assumption can lead to non-compliance due to misconfigurations or a lack of understanding of specific service data handling practices. An approach that delays data privacy considerations until after deployment or only addresses them in response to a security incident is professionally negligent. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of data breaches, regulatory fines, and loss of customer trust. It demonstrates a failure to adhere to the principles of privacy by design and by default, which are fundamental to responsible cloud solution architecture. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud solution architecture, integrating data privacy and compliance considerations into every stage of the design and development lifecycle. This involves 1. Understanding the data. Classify data based on sensitivity and identify applicable regulations. 2. Designing for privacy. Implement privacy by design principles, including data minimization, consent management, and access controls. 3. Selecting appropriate services. Choose IBM cloud services that meet security and compliance requirements and review their data processing agreements. 4. Continuous monitoring and auditing. Regularly review and update security and privacy controls to adapt to evolving threats and regulations. 5. Collaboration. Engage with legal, compliance, and security teams throughout the process. Question 18. Process analysis reveals that a new customer-facing application leveraging IBM cloud services is nearing its deployment deadline. The project team is eager to launch to meet market demands, and there is pressure to expedite the final stages. The solution architect is tasked with ensuring the application's security and compliance posture. Which approach to risk assessment best aligns with regulatory requirements and professional best practices for this scenario? Option A. Rely exclusively on the security documentation and compliance certifications provided by IBM for the chosen cloud services, without conducting an independent, context-specific risk analysis for the application's unique data and usage patterns. Option B. Defer the detailed risk assessment until after the application has been successfully deployed and is operational, to avoid any delays in the critical launch timeline. Option C. Perform a high-level risk assessment that only addresses the most obvious and immediate security threats, assuming that the underlying IBM cloud infrastructure is inherently secure and sufficient. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive, iterative risk assessment that begins during the design phase and continues throughout the solution's lifecycle, involving relevant stakeholders to identify and mitigate threats and vulnerabilities specific to the IBM cloud services and data being handled, ensuring alignment with applicable regulatory frameworks. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive, iterative risk assessment that begins during the design phase and continues throughout the solution's lifecycle, involving relevant stakeholders to identify and mitigate threats and vulnerabilities specific to the IBM cloud services and data being handled, ensuring alignment with applicable regulatory frameworks. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid deployment and innovation with robust risk management. The pressure to deliver a new service quickly can lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process, potentially exposing the organization to significant security, compliance, and operational vulnerabilities. The architect must navigate competing priorities and ensure that risk assessment is not treated as a mere formality, but as a critical, integrated part of the solution design. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks proactively without unduly delaying essential business initiatives. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and iterative risk assessment that begins early in the solution design phase and continues throughout the lifecycle. This aligns with best practices in cloud governance and security frameworks, which emphasize a proactive, risk-based approach. By engaging stakeholders, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the chosen IBM cloud services, and evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks, the architect can develop appropriate mitigation strategies. This ensures that the solution adheres to relevant regulatory requirements, e.g., data privacy laws, industry-specific compliance mandates applicable in the relevant jurisdiction, and organizational policies. The iterative nature allows for adjustments as the solution evolves, ensuring ongoing risk coverage. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the protection of sensitive data, maintains service integrity, and ensures compliance, thereby safeguarding the organization's reputation and financial stability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to defer the risk assessment until after the solution is deployed. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are fundamental to many data protection regulations. Post-deployment assessment means that risks are identified only after they may have already been exploited, leading to potential data breaches, non-compliance penalties, and reputational damage. It also makes remediation significantly more complex and costly. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only considers obvious threats and overlooks subtle vulnerabilities or compliance gaps. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility. It fails to adequately protect the organization and its customers from potential harm. Ethically, it is a dereliction of duty to not thoroughly investigate all plausible risks. From a regulatory standpoint, it can lead to non-compliance with mandates that require a thorough and documented risk management process. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor-provided security assurances without independent verification or context-specific analysis. While IBM cloud services have robust security features, the responsibility for the overall security and compliance of the deployed solution rests with the customer. Ignoring this shared responsibility model and failing to conduct an independent risk assessment tailored to the specific use case and data being handled is a critical oversight. This can lead to regulatory noncompliance and security incidents, as the vendor's assurances may not cover all aspects of the customer's implementation or specific regulatory obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework that integrates risk assessment into every stage of the solution lifecycle. This involves 1. Early engagement. Involve security and compliance teams from the initial design phase. 2. Comprehensive identification. Systematically identify threats, vulnerabilities, and compliance requirements relevant to the specific IBM cloud services and the data being processed. 3. Thorough evaluation. Quantify or qualitatively assess the likelihood and impact of identified risks. 4. Proactive mitigation. Develop and implement controls to reduce risks to an acceptable level. 5. Continuous monitoring. Regularly review and update risk assessments as the solution evolves or the threat landscape changes. 6. Documentation. Maintain clear and auditable records of the risk assessment process and mitigation strategies. This structured approach ensures that risks are managed effectively, compliance is maintained, and the solution is secure and resilient. Question 19. System analysis indicates that a critical business application hosted on IBM Cloud is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user productivity and customer satisfaction. The business unit is urgently requesting immediate remediation, suggesting a specific, unproven configuration change they believe will resolve the issue. As the IBM Cloud Solution Architect, what is the most professional and effective approach to address this situation? Option A. Immediately implement the configuration change requested by the business unit, as their urgency and suggested solution should be prioritized to restore functionality as quickly as possible. Option B. Advise the business unit that a complete re-architecture of the application is necessary to address such performance issues, regardless of the current system state. Option C. Proceed with the business unit's suggested configuration change without further investigation, assuming their understanding of the application's needs is superior. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive performance analysis to identify the root cause of the degradation, gathering relevant metrics and logs, and then propose a data-driven solution that addresses the underlying issue, considering long-term stability and compliance. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive performance analysis to identify the root cause of the degradation, gathering relevant metrics and logs, and then propose a data-driven solution that addresses the underlying issue, considering long-term stability and compliance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, where critical business applications' performance is degrading. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for resolution with the long-term implications of architectural decisions. Stakeholders, particularly the business unit, will be focused on restoring functionality quickly, potentially pushing for immediate, short-term fixes. The solution architect must navigate these pressures while adhering to IBM's architectural principles, best practices, and the specific regulatory environment relevant to the exam's jurisdiction, which for C1000-100 is generally assumed to be a broad, globally applicable set of principles. But if a specific jurisdiction like US or UK were mandated, that would be applied here. The architect's responsibility is to ensure the solution is not only performant, but also secure, compliant, and cost-effective in the long run, which may conflict with the business's immediate desires. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation that prioritizes understanding the root cause before implementing a solution. This aligns with IBM's architectural guidance on problem-solving and continuous improvement. By gathering performance metrics, analyzing logs, and consulting with relevant teams, operations, development, the architect can identify the specific bottlenecks. This methodical approach ensures that any proposed solution addresses the actual problem, rather than a symptom, leading to a more stable and reliable long-term outcome. It also demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to architectural integrity, which is crucial for maintaining stakeholder trust and ensuring compliance with any applicable service-level agreements or industry standards. This approach also implicitly considers the regulatory requirement for system availability and data integrity by seeking to resolve performance issues that could impact these. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a quick fix without thorough analysis is professionally unacceptable because it risks introducing new problems, masking the underlying issue, or leading to a suboptimal and potentially costly solution. This approach disregards the principle of root cause analysis, which is fundamental to robust system design and maintenance. Could lead to repeated incidents, increased technical debt, and a failure to meet long-term performance and reliability objectives. Ethically, it fails to provide the best possible solution to the client or business unit, potentially leading to continued disruption and dissatisfaction. Recommending a complete re-architecture without a clear understanding of the current system's limitations and the specific impact of the performance degradation is also professionally unsound. While re-architecture might be a valid long-term strategy, it is an extreme measure that should be based on comprehensive analysis, not a knee-jerk reaction to a performance issue. This approach is often expensive, time-consuming, and carries significant risk. It bypasses the opportunity to identify and fix issues within the existing architecture, which might be a more efficient and effective solution. It also fails to demonstrate a considered approach to problem solving. Focusing solely on the business unit's immediate request for a specific technology or configuration without independent validation is a failure of architectural responsibility. The architect's role is to provide objective, technically sound recommendations, not to simply fulfill requests without due diligence. This can lead to the adoption of inappropriate technologies, security vulnerabilities, or compliance breaches if the requested solution is not aligned with overall architectural strategy or regulatory requirements. It undermines the architect's credibility and can result in a technically inferior or non-compliant solution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering data and evidence, analyzing the root cause, evaluating potential solutions based on technical feasibility, cost, security, compliance, and long-term impact, and then recommending and implementing the most appropriate solution. Stakeholder communication and expectation management are also critical throughout this process. When faced with performance degradation, the architect must act as a trusted advisor, guiding stakeholders towards a solution that is technically sound and aligns with business objectives and regulatory mandates, rather than succumbing to immediate pressures for quick fixes. Question 20. Research into the optimal IBM cloud services and architectural patterns for a U.S.-based financial institution, considering the need to comply with stringent U.S. financial regulations and data privacy laws. What approach best ensures the proposed solution is both innovative and compliant? Option A. Conduct a detailed mapping of proposed IBM cloud services and architectural components against specific U.S. financial regulations, e.g., SEC, FINRA, OC, and relevant data privacy laws, actively seeking client compliance team validation throughout the design process. Option B. Prioritize the adoption of the most advanced IBM cloud services offering the highest performance metrics, assuming that standard cloud security controls will inherently satisfy regulatory requirements. Option C. Select IBM cloud services based on their general market reputation for security and reliability, deferring the detailed regulatory compliance review to the client's internal IT department after the initial architecture is finalized. Option D. Focus exclusively on the technical capabilities and cost-effectiveness of IBM cloud services, with a plan to address any regulatory concerns through post-deployment remediation efforts. Correct answer is B. Prioritize the adoption of the most advanced IBM cloud services offering the highest performance metrics, assuming that standard cloud security controls will inherently satisfy regulatory requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud solution architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with robust security and compliance requirements. The architect is tasked with designing a solution that leverages cutting-edge IBM cloud services for a financial services client, a sector heavily regulated. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the proposed architecture, while technically advanced and performant, adheres strictly to the relevant U.S. financial regulations, e.g., SEC, FINRA, OCC guidelines, and data privacy laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable to data processed. Though U.S. focus is primary, the pressure to deliver a competitive advantage through technology must be tempered by the absolute necessity of regulatory compliance to avoid severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. The architect must demonstrate a deep understanding of both the technical capabilities of IBM Cloud and the intricate legal and regulatory landscape governing financial data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of IBM cloud services against specific U.S. financial regulatory requirements and data privacy mandates. This includes identifying services that offer built-in compliance features, understanding data residency and sovereignty implications, and designing controls for data encryption, access management, and audit logging that meet or exceed regulatory expectations. The architect must proactively engage with the client's compliance and legal teams to validate the proposed architecture. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes regulatory adherence as a foundational element of the solution design, rather than an afterthought. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and responsible technology deployment, ensuring the client's business operations remain within legal boundaries and safeguarding sensitive financial data. This proactive, integrated approach minimizes risk and builds a foundation of trust. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize the adoption of the latest IBM cloud services solely based on their technical capabilities and performance benefits, without a thorough review of their compliance implications for the financial services sector. This would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it could lead to the deployment of a solution that violates U.S. financial regulations, potentially resulting in hefty fines, legal action, and irreparable damage to the client's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that generic cloud security best practices are sufficient without specific validation against U.S. financial regulations. While general security is important, financial regulations often have very specific requirements regarding data handling, audit trails, and incident response that generic practices may not adequately address. This oversight constitutes a failure to meet the specific legal obligations of the client's industry. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the entire responsibility for regulatory compliance to the client's internal IT or compliance teams, without active architectural input and validation from the solution architect. While collaboration is key, the architect has a professional responsibility to design solutions that are inherently compliant or can be made compliant with reasonable effort. Abrogating this responsibility is an ethical lapse and a failure to provide comprehensive architectural guidance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in cloud solution architecture, especially within regulated industries like financial services, must adopt a risk-aware and compliance-first mindset. The decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of the client's industry, its specific regulatory obligations, and the data types being handled. This understanding should then inform the selection and configuration of cloud services. Architects should proactively identify potential compliance gaps and design solutions that mitigate these risks. Engaging in continuous dialogue with the client's legal, compliance, and security teams is crucial. When faced with choices between technically superior but potentially non-compliant services and less advanced but compliant alternatives, the professional decision is to prioritize compliance, seeking innovative ways to achieve both technical excellence and regulatory adherence. This iterative process of design, validation, and refinement ensures that the final solution is not only functional and performant, but also legally sound and ethically responsible.